So today we're heading to Southern Africa to talk about Angola. Now, as you may or may not know, this is an oil-rich country on the southwestern coast of Africa, which fought a bitter civil war which only ended in 2002. Now, there are no exact numbers that are available, but numbers from the US State Department estimate that in the course of that civil war, anything from 9 to 20 million landmines were placed in Angola across over 1,000 minefields. And as you can imagine, that basically makes the country outside of the major cities a big death trap. And it's a huge break on development. For reference, the major infrastructure project that grabs the headlines in Angola right now is the Benguela Railway, which is part of the wider Lobito corridor. Now, I have expressed some thoughts about the Lobito Railway previously, and that position hasn't changed. But putting that aside, the point is there's a major infrastructure project going on in the country. Apparently, in the process of demining the Lobito Railway corridor alone, just to make it safe for trains to pass and for people to work, an estimated 43,142 anti-personnel landmines, 2,460 anti-tank mines, and 235,050 unexploded explosive devices have been removed already. And that's just on the Lobito corridor alone. But to put that in further perspective, of the 1,016 minefields that have been identified as needing to be cleared, only about 25 have been cleared. According to the latest numbers, about 975 minefields are still yet to even be touched at all out of the roughly 1,000 that have been identified. So that's the situation in Angola. Now, the purported solution to this problem is an organization called the Halo Trust. Now, what the Halo Trust does is that it specializes in destroying weapons that kill civilians and hamper economic recovery in the aftermath of wars like the Angolan Civil War. According to its website, it's active in Syria, in Ukraine, and across Asia and Africa and the Middle East. And what the Halo Trust does not mention on its website is that Angola is by far its biggest engagement of all the engagements that it has, and that the Angolan government is also its biggest donor. And here's where things start to get a bit tricky, because you see, the thing with the Halo Trust is that this is a dysfunctional organization, and one of the telltale signs of dysfunctional organizations, especially in the so-called aid and development and charity sector, is when you start seeing stories like this come out. I know this very well because I myself have worked on a story about a dysfunctional organization in the Nigerian aid and charity and development sector. And as they say, there are always certain cockroaches. You can always tell. Stories like this tend to share certain characteristics. Once you see one cockroach, you know that there's another and there's another. And here's a prime example of one such cockroach. Now, employees of the Halo Trust, who are apparently supposed to be hard at work demining Angola to make it safe for Angolan civilians to go about their daily business, have been caught multiple times, because according to the story, this is not the first, second, or third time this is happening. Multiple times poaching and killing wild animals in the Angolan countryside to sell for meat or for other purposes instead of doing their job. And they've been caught doing this multiple times to the point where they're even being charged to court for it. Now, the additional context here is that according to the Angolan government, the initial deadline that was set for the country to be completely mine-free, which was 2025, December 2025, is said to be exceeded by at least 3 years, making the new deadline 2028. But then it then says that realistically, the deadline could even be pushed back as far as 2030. It'll be fun to see how they could possibly do that in 3 years. I don't think it's possible. And yet, despite all this, the Halo Trust keeps on asking for more money, essentially from the Angolan government. So this has led some to conclude that all of this money, which is being spent by the government and which is going to this organization, and which one can see no evidence of its being put to use for the purpose it was meant for, some have suggested that this means that this money is being laundered somewhere else. This money is probably being funneled corruptly. It's being embezzled using the routes that are available to a global charity like the Halo Trust. Now, I don't know if that is true, but the facts of the matter state very clearly that the deadline for demining Angola was supposed to be December 2025. And not only is the country nowhere near achieving that target or anything close to it, but that even the main infrastructure project, which makes all of the headlines in the country, continues to result in the deaths and injuries of workers who are merely just trying to build a railway line, because the organization whose job it is to remove these mines is simply not doing its job. This can only lead to two conclusions. First of all, that the Angolan government itself is at best an enabler of this by continuing to pay for this organization to not do its job for reasons best known to them. And then the organization itself at this point potentially needs to be yanked off the engagement. Potentially the Angolan government needs to find a different way of accomplishing this, because if after all these years 975 are still outstanding and the deadline officially is supposed to be December this year, then I think that tells a story in itself. So that's it for Angola today. Out with the Halo Trust and in with something new, because you guys need it.